Did you ever wonder why all of a sudden, overnight, the day of Phase 3 Secrets of the Storm, everybody suddenly just completely turned on Laser of the Hover? I did. For 9 months, some people even went as far as to call it the best ability in the game, and the next day I saw people in the Discord literally say, oh, Laser of the Hover sucks now. And in my head I thought, okay, buffing a different ability while keeping Laser of the Hover completely the same should not make it bad all of a sudden, right? I mean, there was one glitch that made it way better than it should, but just fixing that shouldn't have made it bad. Between the 9 months of Secrets of the Storm launch and the Phase 3 update, there was a very buggy ability called Laser of the Hover, and one of those bugs, the one more well known, was that the attack speed of the ability did not reset until you closed your game. You could get 100 syringes in a run, and Laser of the Hover would retain that attack speed through runs, game modes, through everything until the game was closed. But that wasn't even the biggest glitch it had. The reason why this ability was so goddamn powerful was because every time you used Laser of the Hover, it would apply the attack speed again. Every time. It didn't matter for how long you fired it, you could tap the ability button and it add more attack speed over and over again, persisting through every run. It just ramped up attack speed forever. All because in the code, instead of a question mark checking for and applying a value, it is a plus, meaning it added it. Which, I mean, I guess it's kinda conditional since you need attack speed in the first place, I guess. Is what I would say if Fulson, didn't start with an attack speed multiplier for his passive. And this was global, by the way. You could have 4 full suns running around the lobby and just spamming Laser of the Hover to ramp its attack speed infinitely. But thankfully, this was shadow patched in the Phase 3 update, right? 9 months later. But obviously, just fixing that wouldn't have made the ability bad, right? Well, of course it's not that simple, no. Now Laser of the Hover basically has the opposite issue, where it just won't scale with your attack speed at all. Laser of the Hover has a total tick amount of 32 by default, right? So now if I pick up a light flux, cutting my attack speed in half, entirely in half, it should be around 15 ticks, right? But it's fucking 31. For some reason it just doesn't, it doesn't work at all. But that's obviously light flux, that's a massive decrease to your attack speed, so obviously syringes will be impacted even worse by this. Here it is with 10 syringes. 150% attack speed, over 2 times the attack speed you have. And this is how many ticks I'm getting. Measly increase of 2. Omega, also known as in the Discord, ran a test for this, and since I'm a poor console player, I'll just show you the end results of his testing after I made a neat little spreadsheet of it. And as you can see this, you can digest it for yourself, but basically the attack speed has erectile dysfunction, right? 100 syringes is the equivalent of what would be 3 3/4 of a syringe. A single syringe is less than a single percent, meaning it would alone just outright not affect the skill. That's completely nothing. But that's not all. This is a clip from Disputed Origin. Can you tell me what here is working properly with the ability that just doesn't anymore? Well, I'm not gonna give you the time to guess because you're not gonna guess it. Now, when the lunar spikes are refilled through Laser of the Hover, after Phase 3, it forces the cooldown to restart. And it did not do this before, at all. And that also brings us perfectly to the next glitch ability, Lunar Spikes and Lunar Stakes. Even though it's about a debuff, it really needs to be brought up and talked about, as it is a very major thing and has been for over 500 days as I'm writing this script. To explain why it's so absurdly fucking broken, let's talk about proc chains, right? Proc chains are extremely powerful to defend working off of total damage. If an ability deals 1000 damage and procs an ATG, at 1 stack that will deal 300% damage of whatever procced it, so 3000 damage, right? And if that procs a charge perforator, let's say, again, at 1 stack, it'll deal 500% total damage of whatever procced it for a whopping 15,000 damage. 15 times larger than the original ability. Pretty good, The proc items all scale off of each other. Now Lunar Ruin double dips. And double is in quotes here, because if you have 10 Lunar Ruin, it will push the original hit by double damage. Makes sense. Which scales the ATG off, which is a little bit off, but that's fine. But then when the AGG hits, it also applies the damage bonus. And when the charge perforator, again, it scales off of the boosted AGG damage and it gets applied the Lunar Ruin buff to its hit, turning a proc chain from 1000 to 3000 to 15,000 damage into 2000, 12,000 and 120,000. Do you realize how fucking absurdly ridiculous that is? And Breaching Fin also does this. It's not off the hook here. I know it's an ability, but it still should be brought up. It's so insanely unhealthy for the game. It just makes it so every single fucking run just defaults the build to always purely play into it. There is no build variety, it's just all Lunar Ruin. Even Bands and Luminous Shot, Fate Double Dip all the same. It's just nasty. And this isn't a damage multiplier type of thing, no. Deathmark is perfectly fine and it's like right there. I mean, I'm not a coder, but surely you just had like perfectly fine code for a debuff that multiplies damage ready to go there, but I guess I don't know. The reason for this is basically that it's coded like shit, is that things like watches increase the damage enemies take. If you have a watch, a 100 damage attack procs a 300 damage missile, but the enemy takes 120 damage. A Fin makes a 100 damage attack increase to 110 damage, then proc a 330 damage missile. It's applied to the base damage value before that's passed into the regular formula, instead of being a part of the regular formula, which is also why it can cause things to proc bands that shouldn't, just like this 5-year-old console clip. Multi-R Boy has gotten dragged through the mud to do AC in terms of polish, to do dysfunctional coupler, that handy view of your backup retail equipment in the HUD, gone, completely disappeared and has not been re-implemented yet. But what mainly has made this ability broken is that in an attempt to fix the numerous exploits with dysfunction coupler, trying to swap an equipment for the first time after filling both retail slots, makes it disappear, gone, just poof. What's basically happening is that the equipment has gone into a third invisible phantom slot, let's call it, which is only accessible if you then get dysfunction coupler. But in addition, if you have coupler as multi, you can now infinitely duplicate the equipment slots, but that's too complicated for me to wrap my head around, and it's too confusing for me to figure out, so I'll just kinda... Possibly the most broken and damaged ability we'll discuss today, Tactical Dive. An ability which has been ruined after the release Seekers of the Storm and never looked back on again. But because of my extreme inexperience with it due to never coming back to it after, I unlocked Slide like half a decade ago, I was only aware of it being glitched, not how, so I reached out to someone who did know. AC. You might think, why AC out of all people? Well, he has 15,000 hours on the game, but half of those are on default commando. This is a player unlike most. In my eyes, one of the most respectable players in Risk of Rain Discord, because unlike everyone else, he gave Tactical Dive a shine in the spotlight. He gave it a chance when others didn't. Now keep this in mind during everything I will say about this. Just as AC said, I would like to point out that I'd still consider it a worse skill of Slide even when it functions properly, just due to how little base mobility it has. But as someone who has never got to truly play around with it in its prime, it does look pretty fun, and trimping without being grounded is something that only Chef can actually manage, and then to a limited extent too. Granted, Slide is still better, but after seeing it, the scenario feels a lot like Coughing Baby versus Nuclear Bomb, and a little bit more like Nuclear Baby versus Nuclear Bomb. Like, don't get me wrong, that baby is dead. But, I mean, the baby is kinda cooking, you have to admit. And even though me and AC literally disagree on every other thing on a daily basis now, like seriously, you could not get me to say some of these things even if it meant I had to go into Spanish donkey. Like, you could not torture these things out of me. But even with that, it's just impossible for any of it to make me disregard anything he's saying just to the raw and immense respect I have to him for making shit work. Just makes dive work, makes bubble sheet work. He's an insane person. Insanely skilled person, an insanely respectable person, but still insane. Now what actually changed with Tactical Dive after Secrets of the Storm? Well, I'll read out some of what AC said, but feel free to pause the video to read all of it, as I wanted everything he said to be included and readable for those who want, but I just can't read all of it for basic reasons. When referring to Alt Dive, AC says it was still janky mind you, but at least the jank was more consistent. He says, the main issue plaguing it in recent versions is that it inherits momentum now. If you try to use it to change directions abruptly, you'll run into some unfortunate side effects of this. And if you use it to change directions while moving upwards, this happens. However, if you don't try to change directions while moving upwards, it will still send you at an upwards angle, but will use the forward momentum to dampen that angle. If you change directions with it while moving downwards, you basically just stop in place. It also just completely stops working entirely off of jump pads, but how it's supposed to work is that it's supposed to pretty much completely ignore momentum and just send you a set distance based on your base movement speed stat and then bounce over terrain that is angled upwards. It's supposed to flatten your movement angle to be completely horizontal whether you're moving upwards or downwards, and be used off of jump pads to either land early and regain your control, or use it in junction with the frictionless state to launch yourself in a direction that you will continue to move until you land or crash into something. Overall, the main issue with it no longer is that a momentum though is that it doesn't really even give it anything to set it apart from slide. It's also just overall less interesting. All the tech you have to learn with the way dive works now just ends up mostly being things that you have to take into considerations much more actively to avoid hitting a brick wall or tripping off into the air when you don't want to. It just feels worse since you can't use it for what it was actually good at before, which was changing directions quickly while midair and holding a position better. And while the old dive was still really janky and still overall the worst mobility option, it gave you a reason to really understand the layout of the map and learn when dive would and wouldn't jump off of terrain. So it was pretty rewarding. And then you start tripping off the enemies themselves mid-combat, and the possibilities for the skills start to seem limitless. And since we're on the topic of mobility, Drifter's repossess in its current state never ever scales with your sprint speed, allegedly due to her needing to do the backspin animation and getting her leap momentum before she can match a sprint, but I'm not 100% confident about that. Now, while it not scaling with energy drinks is an undisputable fact, it is worth to note that with enough sprint speed, you can affect the ability kinda, since you can move after the leap, that movement is theoretically increased. But it's only a thing in hypothetical scenarios like here, where I have 83 energy drinks. But as you can see by how far it brings me, the actual distance of the ability has not shifted at all, just the movement after it. And another thing about Drifter is that for some reason slamming the cubes while they're inside of her sack can trigger these weird phantom procs, I guess, but also proc bans. Mainly proccing bans on literally nothing is the biggest issue here. Next up, let's look at something broader. Let's talk about a bug which has been coined by the community as the Pierce bug. A bug which even after more than 1,000 hours in the game is really fucking annoying. I really want them to fix it. Because, basically, it's a logic error in the game by failing to account for Pierce when the game calculates the trajectory of your aim in the third person. That is to say, if I look at this point in the wall, I fire at that point in the wall. If I try that again with an enemy in front of me, I fire nowhere near that point in the wall. The mod to fix this is called Attack Direction Fixed by Gurak, and they explain it very well, but essentially, the direction the attack should go in is determined by your camera's rotation. However, the aim origin, coming from the character, obviously can't match that since they come out of the player character. So what Hobo did was make the game find the closest object to your crosshair, and then make the aim direction go in a straight line where it intersects with where the objects would meet with the crosshair. But this obviously makes it misaligned with every piercing ability, such as Face Blast, Reaper Punch, Nano Speed, Blinding Assault, Focus Assault, Supercharge, Charge, Corrupted, Giant Spirit, Punch, Bomb Blast, Lunar Stakes, Laser Burst, and Dice. You get the idea? You do. I believe in you. I think you do. The fix for this, well, change it from this to this. You just make the camera direction the aim origin. But Since shooting out of the camera is bad for many reasons, for a short period of the projectile's lifetime in the mod, the visuals of projectiles are offset to appear to come out of the characters as usual, and then interpolate the actual path, while projectile collision and logic related things follow the actual path, while everything visual follows the visual path before lining up with the actual path after a short while. And please have it be base game. I really want this in base game. It's like actually such a bad need. Please. Another massive bug which needs to be fixed, affecting not only player abilities but also enemy abilities, is shit just visually disappearing. This has been an issue since the console rework / Secrets of the Storm for PC, and it has just not been fixed. This can happen to literally any ability. Diablo, Epidemic, I've heard of it happening with Flurry, and has happened with Mifrix's Pizza many a times before. Commander's Double Tap specifically has an arbitrary capped attack speed. Yes, the most basic ability in the game is also glitched. Its current cap is 20 shots per second instead of an expected 30 to the leftover code from an unused reload mechanic. You see, the vast majority of skills stay in one state for their entire duration. These skills shoot a maximum of once per frame to have a max fire rate of 60 shots per second. Now, some skills involve switching between states, which can only be done once per frame. This means that every change of state adds one game tick of delay before the next shot can be fired. However, Double Tap has an erroneous second state change in addition to its intended one. The leftover code from set cut reload mechanic checks and switches a state for if commander needs to reload his primary if he ran out, adding a completely arbitrary state to switch every shot. This means that it can fire up to a maximum of once every 3 game ticks, aka once every 3 FPS at base, instead of once every 2 ticks, resulting in a decrease of max fire rate. And also a massive thank you to Fox for helping with this part of the video. Without his insight and testing, it really wouldn't have been able to document it here. And now that the major things that I made this video for have been covered, I want to cover some smaller ability bugs. Now, these should still obviously get fixed, which is why I'm speaking about them, but they're not the main appeal of the video, I guess. First up, Railgunner, and I'm gonna start with the less major but honestly more disappointing thing to me. This is Railgunner's scope before Secrets of the Storm, and this is it after. Holy shit, it is so bad. This is a bug which has been around for so long and genuinely really disappoints me. It's just unpleasant and genuinely really overwhelming to me. I'm not over exaggerating when I say it makes my eyes feel physically strained, making Railgunner less appealing to me, because when I play her, it actually just makes me feel physically unwell. Please fix this. I've reported for different places at different times and it's just been cherry picked to not being fixed, I guess. It's the first thing I ever saw when I started my first ever run on the release of Swords, and it really just, really set the precedent for what that was like. But anyway, the more major thing I guess for Railgunner is that her passive of converting crit chance to crit damage is a hidden item, which due to an oversight is tied to the Survivors of the Void DLC being enabled, meaning that if you disable the DLC, it just doesn't work. And additionally, since she can't naturally crit, it means Charge Perforator can never crit as Railgunner because it rolls crit separately for God knows why. Thank you Hopu, thank you, much love, thank you. Operator, Transport Drone, Stationary Enemy, Admin Override, we all know about this one already, I don't need to cover it in depth. Operator's Ascent Protocol sometimes just doesn't turn into the dive, it's really fucking annoying and I have no idea what happens at all, so that's all I can say. These next two for Mercenary could technically in some way not be bugs, but like, let's be honest with ourselves here. Adversary targets allies, self-explanatory, it's pretty dog shit, it just makes your drones cockblock you all the fucking time. It's really annoying. But the more interesting thing is Focused Assault. You see, when Early Access Content Update 5 launched, more commonly known as the 1.0 version of the game, Hobo did a pretty big overhaul to Mercenary to give him more skill expression. One of the smaller changes for were to let him cancel Blinding Assault with either of his secondaries. A pretty great change. However, when Focused Assault was added in the Anniversary update, they just forgot to also give it that property, I guess. Awesome stuff, really. Seeker and False sound like animation logic, I think. I'm not sure what else to call it, but some animations just don't connect with the others for several actions, and it's pretty bad. It's kind of laughable, to be honest. Oh, and also, why does Laser of the Father have fall off but Laser Burst doesn't at all? Like, why? For both laser beams, what? Can we change this? This kind of sucks. And that should be it. I initially had like a bunch of stuff to say here about the background of this video and what it kind of went through and some other stuff, but I guess it doesn't really matter with the recent announcements. Since the game is getting discontinued on the platform I play on, This channel is probably 6 feet under now. It's probably the right choice for them to make, but it does suck a lot. I made a community post with some of my thoughts on it that I'll put up on the screen now so you can read it, but it's kind of bittersweet, and it's very unfortunate. You probably won't see me around the community anywhere near as much, and I'll probably start trying to get used to that effective since this video. I'll probably still pop in every once in a while, but it just wouldn't make sense or be that healthy for me to try and engage with a community. I'll be disconnected from more and more, and there's no point in making videos on a franchise which future I won't be able to engage with. But I would like to thank a bunch of people in the community for being able to make it a place I could very confidently call my home. A comfortable and fun place that I can not only express my passion in, but also have it be fueled by others and hopefully fuel others. And an insanely massive shout out to Cyanide, also known as Cyanide infused leftist, for helping me with this video massively. It wouldn't have been possible for it to hold the quality it does without them, that's for sure, so thank you, thanks a lot. I might come back one day, I really hope I do, but it probably isn't gonna be anytime soon due to financial and personal reasons. And if I were to come back anytime sooner than like 2 years or something, it probably won't be anything short of a miracle or someone's massive generosity. But just like always, bye bye!